Yeah, so in the groups, this exercise was meant to demonstrate that in order to communicate effectively, you need to take other people's perspectives. For me, this exercise demonstrated something vital for mental health. Connecting with other people can take practice. What's the right way to ask somebody to hang out or to go on a date? And who pays the bill? Should you split it? What does that mean? Does it mean that you support gender equality? Does it mean that you're cheap? The answer depends on who you are with. For anthropologists, culture is not just something in a museum. It's actually these everyday interactions, these languages, not just of words, but of behaviors, of values, and even of fashions. Like, is this a cool band or not? The Rameens. These languages are all around us, and they shape how people see us. They shape how we see ourselves. That's why when we don't speak the language well, it can be disturbing. We also don't know how other people view us. Some people share enough of a common language that they can be pretty confident they won't say anything too wrong. But if we don't speak this cultural language smoothly, it can feel like something is really wrong with us. It can be terrifying. Anxiety is the most diagnosed mental health issue among college students in the United States. It's nearly 40% have been diagnosed. And social anxiety is the most common specific anxiety diagnosed. And that involves worry about social evaluation. Some 8% of US college students have been diagnosed, and many more suffer. And these anxieties often begin in early adulthood when people are trying to figure out who they are and to find people to be with. And in these circumstances, we can feel like we're always performing for other people. Psychologist David Elkind came up with a concept that captures this feeling. He called it the imaginary audience. It's a feeling that you're always being watched and judged. And it's especially common among adolescents and young adults. And the ability to put on a good performance for this audience can feel like some mysterious superpower. What is the Riz? Sorry? Oh, did I lose you? Some of you don't speak this language. So let me explain. Riz is charisma, the ability to be charming. Is this some magical personal quality? Is it something we can learn? But then, what if there's no right answer? Like, is this a cool hat? Well, you can't be certain. But if you share a fashion sense with some group of people, you can wear the hat pretty comfortably. Your casual confidence is not magic. It is because you speak a common language. From the outside, though, it's easy for people to imagine that you have some special talent or some kind of secret. Charisma seems like some inner glow. Is there a secret code? Anxiety also can feel like something mysterious about who we are. But just like confidence, it often signals something about our connection to the cultural languages around us. Some parts of this language are very, very clear, as speakers have been talking about earlier. There's a lot of pressure to look certain ways, but it's not only about appearing the right way physically. It's about how you look on the beach, but it's also about how you explain to people why you took time off to go on vacation. Personal growth, self-care. What does this green juice mean, and to whom? There's no one audience, and there's no single language. There are a lot of ideas floating around us through which we figure out who we are. Some of the images by which we judge ourselves are deadly clear. And so we're told to ignore them, or to know our own worth, or even to fight against these toxic social standards. And these are important messages. But I want to say that it's not enough, because anxiety isn't always about having a negative self-image. It can also be about just not knowing who we are. And we can't ignore, let alone fight against, social standards that are about everyday interactions or fashions. I mean, how should I end my email? When I say goodbye to somebody, am I supposed to give them a hug or not? Is this talk TED Talky enough? As a child of immigrants, I know what it's like to feel out of sync with what people around us think is interesting, what people like, but the connection between migration and anxiety is not always so direct. Moving to a new country can certainly create anxiety. We might have an accent. We might not have seen the same TV shows as the people around us. But actually, I found something interesting in my research. When I studied socially anxious students in the United States, I found that the students who came from abroad often had an advantage. When they felt anxious, they often realized that it was because they didn't know the foreign social codes. So one student told me about arriving in California from China, and he was used to saying, if he agreed, he'd say, "Oh yeah, okay." But that suddenly felt awkward. In California, he was supposed to go, "Oh yeah, great." That was his experience anyway. Students from the United States couldn't see that the people around them were following cultural scripts. They just felt everybody was acting normally, and they were having a hard time doing that. They easily assumed that something was terribly wrong with them. So one student told me he was having doubts just saying hello. He felt that was too stiff, too formal, but he didn't know what else he should say instead. Maybe, "Yo, what's up?" Well, not if you're my age. See, things can go very awkward very quickly for a lot of reasons. And the American students were also struggling with these cultural codes. Today, a lot of people are disoriented. We encounter conflicting ideas about who we are supposed to be, often online and almost always from people who don't know us at all. We move to different cities for school, for work. We move across boundaries that we don't see, boundaries of social class, into different social groups. In the social skills training programs that I studied in China, most people were internal migrants. They had moved from other cities and towns. Most of them were recent college graduates and were trying to figure out who they were and what they should be doing. They had anxieties about job interviews, about dates. And the groups, I think, helped a lot of people. But this wasn't because of any special therapeutic technique or psychological insight. It was because of something that the group members did together. They practiced public speaking. And in doing so, they gave a lot of talks about what they believed in, about their values, about making their own decisions, exploring their personal interests, about lifestyles. Should you take time off of work to travel? These kind of everyday concerns mattered to group members as they were figuring out who they were in enormous megacities. How much money should you spend to look good? Do you need to spend a lot? This speech was part of a conversation through which people could learn about how their peers were thinking about important everyday issues. And over time, the group members developed a shared language. They didn't all agree, but they gained confidence from joining in this shared conversation. We learn who we are by interacting with others. That's a fundamental premise of anthropology. But we can't do that unless we are curious, unless we try to reach out. And we are surrounded by a language of fashions, of habits, of social backgrounds, of histories. But because this language is invisible, it's so common, we feel like fish who don't know what the water is. We can't see it, but we do feel the flow of these cultural codes. We feel that we are surrounded by something that is vitally important to us, by these currents of meaning that determine whether or not we are understood and accepted. If we can't see that these languages of belonging are shaping our anxieties, we start to wonder what's wrong with us. Maybe we just moved to a new place, but because we feel vulnerable, we start to feel like we have some shameful secret. The imaginary audience is imaginary, but imaginary things can haunt us. So we start looking for what's wrong. Maybe we look at our weight or our jawline. Maybe we start looking for some hidden secret in us, a forbidden desire, a flawed gene. Or maybe we look out there for something to blame for how we feel, and that can be very dangerous. Maybe we isolate ourselves only with people who agree with us. Maybe we isolate ourselves in our rooms, and we don't even go out, definitely not to the cafeteria. Or we can choose to take that discomfort as a signal to figure out how to connect. Who is it that you want to talk to? So I have 2 take-home messages for you, as I was taught to have in the public speaking groups. First, when you feel like something is really wrong and everyone can see your hidden flaw, stop, take a breath, and consider that maybe nothing is wrong with you. Maybe it's about where you are and who you are with. If some people are laughing around the cafeteria table and it looks like they have some secret bond, well, maybe it's just that they saw the same TV shows. Maybe that's all that's going on. And my second message is to realize that you do care. It's human to care about how people see us. We don't know if people will like our hat. We can't be certain. Wear it anyway. Not because we don't care what other people think. It's because we care a lot what some people think. And maybe your hat makes sense in somebody else's language. Maybe your hat starts a conversation.